This president has tried to find a way to blame everybody or anybody for everything. And leadership requires that you stand up, take a position, provide clarity, and take responsibility. And I can't imagine him saying that he didn't draw the red line.
I make up the facts about a war, but that's for another story. Of course, that being Donald Rumsfeld, the former defense secretary under the last President Bush, going after the president for how the president has handled Syria. Now, it's one of the constant positions we've heard from NeoCons who came up with Iraq and Afghanistan, the critiques we've heard of the president. Rumsfeld also says that we should go after Syria, by the way, which the president says, but only if regime change is our goal. You heard me right. He wants to get rid of Assad and put in somebody else since it worked so well in Iraq. Okay. Now, before I go to my guest, if anybody saw earlier today, you saw Senator Sessions, powerful Republican, who said if we were here under George W. Bush, this would be handled much better. This is actually what people are saying right now. So, for more on the NeoCon perspective when it comes to Syria, I earlier spoke to Danielle Pletka. She's the Vice President of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Take a listen.
I think that it's very important that the United States respond to Syria's chemical weapons attack on its own people. Then again, I've thought that it's very important that the United States take a stronger position on Syria for the last 2 years. The problem for all of us is, are we doing this to protect and preserve the president's credibility and manhood, and we're just going to hit a couple empty tents and then be done with it and say, there, we showed you? Or does the president actually have a strategy to tip the balance in Syria? None of us have any clue.
But it's very clear, especially with the growing voices from some libertarian lawmakers, including the Rand Pauls of the world, that they don't believe that we have a role, period, outside of the domestic U.S. And some of the growing voices of libertarians coming out of the Republican Party say this isn't our fight. What do you say to those who say we have enough problems here, we shouldn't be going abroad and trying to change things going on in Syria? Forget about not being robust enough. They don't want to have any role whatsoever.
I'm always disappointed when senators and congressmen from the libertarian wing of the Republican Party try and mislead the American people. If we think that a bad economy, that unemployment, that all of these things are a problem, let me tell you, al-Qaeda getting a hold of chemical weapons, Hezbollah getting a hold of chemical weapons will bring a whole new meaning to the concept of horrible. And they owe it to the American people to explain why we don't have an interest in more stability in the Middle East.
Explain, the White House said today that if there's a no vote for an authorization of force, it just doesn't stop at Syria. They say it sends a direct message also to Iran and obviously their efforts to secure nuclear power and also to creating more extremists in Syria. Is that hyperbole, or do you think they're right?
It certainly sends a message to Iran, but let's remember where this started. The President of the United States made a decision to go into Libya without congressional authorization. The actions that we took there were far more than anything that's been proposed for Syria. Now, all of a sudden, it's Congress's fault if the United States loses its credibility with Iran. The President didn't need to go to Congress in the first place. The only reason he did was to share the blame if things went wrong.
But leadership of Congress of both parties said it was the right thing to ask for congressional authorization. It was the right thing to involve Congress on this. Certainly the legislative branch disagrees with you that they had a role here.
Okay, well, of course the legislative branch disagrees with me. The legislative branch is about protecting its own prerogatives. But the law of the land says, the War Powers Act says, that the president needs to go to Congress for authorization within 60 days of the start of hostilities, not as a prelude to ask for permission. The president, whether you like him or not, is in fact the commander-in-chief according to our Constitution.
So would you advise, regardless of how Congress votes here, whether the House and Senate both say no, he should still act anyway? We are where we are right now. Let's not go back in time. I'm saying going forward, if Congress doesn't give him the green light, should he go in anyway?
I think that it is something that we can't contemplate, the notion that Congress doesn't give the president the green light. I think that's going to be up to the president. Next week, they're briefing the full House on Monday. The president is going to address the nation on Tuesday. It's up to him to make a persuasive case to the American people and to the Congress that anything other than a yes vote here is not acceptable. So far, he hasn't done it. Let's see if he can.
But if he does, and they still vote no, should he still go ahead?
It's a very hard question, and I guess on balance I'd say the answer is no. If Congress explicitly says no, then I think he's boxed himself into an absolutely terrible position, not just for Barack Obama, but for every subsequent commander-in-chief in the United States.
Danielle Pletka, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Richard, we're going to have the vote, as we believe, early next week, maybe as early as Wednesday after the president speaks. The guys who cast the no votes, I'm not going to get to the hypocrites, okay? We'll talk about them next segment. Are they going to have a hard time turn around and still being the tough guys when they say, we don't want to support this president, when maybe they supported Afghanistan or more specifically Iraq?
Well, listen, when you look at the case for Iraq and you look at the case for Afghanistan, it's certainly not the case for Syria. And you look at the public opinion for Iraq and Afghanistan, it certainly isn't the same public opinion for Syria. So if the guys that say no, then they certainly can say, listen, the American public did not support it, and the president didn't lay out a very good case for it.
But how about that famous line, politics stops at the water's edge? When there's times, whether it's national security or we believe America's interest, or you get behind the president, Republican, Democrat, Purple Party, who cares? In this particular case, is there an element that we're hurting ourselves as a country here?
Look, when a president went to Congress, this is what he faces,
Yeah.
okay? So perhaps he should have had a better relationship with Congress, not just on how we deal with Syria,
possible, but, yeah.
but how about we deal with the economy? But when he comes to Congress, that's what happened. Just like when Cameron went to the British Parliament, when you take it to another body, you don't have the control. It's a risk you take.
Do you believe, though, Andrew,
but
that people
he
are
could do this himself,
wistfully
though.
of George W. Bush?
Yeah, but these are the people who wanted John McCain to win the White House, and then they wanted Mitt Romney to win the White House, and they wanted anybody but Barack Obama to win the White House.
And we won't be discussing this now if they did.
The degree of contortionism that is going to have to go on amongst the hawks
Tom, do you
in
hear what you said?
Congress.
If John McCain were president, do you think we'd be limited to a few tomahawks off the coast?
We'd
have
first of
boots
all,
on the ground in Damascus. Who are you kidding? Is that what you
no,
want?
no.
He already said he doesn't want to see a wimp response by the president. He wants to see him double down.
That doesn't look. John
No,
McCain.
think about
John,
that.
Look,
John
did
McCain's
you see the
solution to
John
traffic
McCain
jams
town
in
hall?
Manhattan is to send in the
John
military.
McCain makes a decision that he believes is right. He doesn't sit there and look at polling.
Fine. But
if he believes it's right, he's going to make the decision.
You don't have
it's
to
the same
guess.
thing this president
Richard, you don't
should
have to
done.
guess what he wants. He would have doubled down like in the Rumsfeld
McCain
years.
has been a soldier himself. He's not going to send another soldier in harm's way if he
He
doesn't
already
think it's
said
the
he
best
would.
thing.
The list
If
of
he doesn't
countries-
think it's the best thing.
The list of
to do.
countries that McCain has said he wants to invade or that we should invade, we'd be in Iran right now, we'd be in Syria, we'd be in Egypt, we'd be in Libya, we'd be in,
insane.
we might be in Georgia.
Do you
Don't forget
think-
Georgia.
Do you believe,
That's insane.
Andrew believes, and he's got some history to base this, that the president's playing 3 steps ahead on the chessboard here? I think he's making up as he's going along. Do you think there's a strategy
I think
here?
this president has been playing 5 steps ahead, and he has no other choice. No, I didn't have to up you. I mean, here's what I find remarkable. If he had a better relationship with Congress, why doesn't Congress have a better relationship with him? Why is the onus on him and not the other way around?
Because it's a different institutional body. It's a
But
separation of powers.
I don't think this has to do with his relationship with Congress. I have to say, to go back to your original question, I think Congress absolutely would follow the president if they knew where the heck he stood on this. And I think that is the key
I think
problem.
more than half would.
More
I
than
think
half.
some would
He
have just
would
been
get
against
this
him
passed.
instinctively.
I don't think on something about foreign policy. I have to say, people would follow him. The American public would follow him. The Congress would folw him if they felt he really
Fair
could
enough.
tell us
I
where
think
he
you
stood
might
on this
agree
thing.
with the next person we're going to talk about.
Oh boy, is it somebody good?
Oh, this guy drove me crazy. I like you, but this one doesn't. When we come back, I'm going to talk about hypocrisy of the highest order, and it stands, not you, but it stands exactly with what we're talking about. Some people are on the fence, I believe, because they're morally conflicted. Other ones are scoring political points at the president, I think also at the American expense here. We're going to tell you who and why after this.